Hey, welcome to the video. What is up, brats? Today we're talking about The Umbrella Academy. For those of you who have not seen it, I'm going to give you a brief little introduction that is spoiler-free, and I will warn you when the spoilers begin. I went in completely blind. I didn't know what to expect. The only thing I knew was that people were talking about it, but the only thing they would say is, it's a good show, you should watch it, and nothing else. And I would ask people, like, so what's it about? And they're like,
It's hard to explain.
well, friends, I bring forth sacred knowledge. I journeyed into the unknown, uphill both ways barefoot in the snow, to bring you the forbidden secrets. Salvation has come. I am your shaman. Let's begin. It's an extremely complex story, so for those of you who already know what it's about, one, why wouldn't you tell anyone? Why was it all a secret? No one could tell me what it was about. Why? And number two, bear with me, just a few minutes, we'll get to the nitty-gritty of all of my superior opinions. The Umbrella Academy is about a bunch of kids who were all born at the same time on the same day, sometime in October in the 80s, I don't remember exactly. The thing is, the women who gave birth to the children were at no point pregnant beforehand. They just were suddenly full-term delivering out of nowhere. And there were 43 cases of that, to be exact. But so this older gentleman named Sir Reginald Hargreaves went around and tried to adopt as many as he could and ended up with 7, believing them to have special powers. And lo and behold, the monocled douchebag had it right. So he trained them from very young ages to be crime-fighting superheroes. But alas, with no real mother and an emotionally unavailable father figure, they also grew up with some pretty decent emotional baggage. And that's where the story begins. They're all adults in different directions, and something happens that brings them all back to the academy to solve some sort of mystery. That's the best, basic, spoiler-free, washed-out version I can give you. But before you click off thinking this is some cheesy sci-fi show, I'll have you know that the aesthetic is dark, sarcastic, mysterious, and cinematically beautiful. And also, fun 80s music will play during crazy intense fight scenes, and that is my bread and butter. It's rated TV-14, which is shocking for Netflix, considering they just generally like to jump in headfirst with the TVMA. So there's no unnecessary graphic sex scenes, but the gore does get to be a little much in my opinion. I'm surprised they got away with as much as they did. It's not terrible, but I did have to look away a few times, and I don't really consider myself that squeamish. Just a heads up if that's something that will bother you, it gets a little bloody. Alright, the nitty gritty. From here on out, it is Spoiler Mania. It is the Coachella of spoilers. So if you haven't bought a ticket, you will need to exit the video now. So yesterday was the day I finished watching the series and am filming it today, so I'm still freshly on the high of the show, but I will try to give you a careful, clear-cut analysis of the show, carefully researched and without bias. Nah, I loved it, okay? I loved it. I freaking just... But I will start with the things that I didn't like, get those out of the way, rip the band-aid off, so we can get to what sparks joy. I felt that the first episode dragged a lot, and that's very common for a new series because they have to introduce things and you're not familiar with the characters, so everything can feel a little more slow-paced. However, I didn't even find that to be the case. I finished the first episode with more questions than I even began the episode with. They leave you in the dark about so many things, and maybe, definitely, I'm just not smart enough to pick up on the subtle cues, but I'll be honest, it took me a solid 3 episodes to finally have some kind of grasp on who these characters were and what was going on. I mean, the show even ends with you still in the dark on so much, like how Ben died, what was going on with their mom, and where Mr. Pogo came from. I understand that maybe that part's not necessary to understanding the story, so I can just, like, okay, this chimp wanders around the house with the brain of a wise old man, like a hairy Mr. Jeeves, so just go with it, that's fine, I can deal with that. So basically, I didn't like feeling so in the dark in the beginning. Sure, I suppose it added to some suspense, but I think that there were so many little nuances that just went over my head because I didn't understand who these characters were. Like, they would try to make jokes or make subtle innuendos, and it's like, those are inside jokes. I don't know who those people are. That doesn't make any sense to me. So next, it's never explained what actually happened to Luther. So Sir Hargreaves just happened to have a vial of, like, mutant gorilla DNA laying around to save his life. You have that kind of technology, but you don't have a way to heal him that, I don't know, doesn't result in the complete alteration of his DNA. I suppose we're not given an explanation because even maybe Luther doesn't actually understand what happens to him, so we're kind of put in his shoes, and again, we don't, I guess, need to know, but it's just another thing that bothers me. Where did the gorilla potion come from? There was no Captain America serum he could have used. He was like, no, I only have gorilla potion. That's the only thing that'll save him. I have the technology to alter his DNA entirely, but not just something that will speed up his healing. Cool. So next, Diego kept just leaving in the middle of conversations all the time. It was starting to get a little redundant, and especially after his girlfriend dies, he keeps leaving the middle of conversations saying, I have to go avenge, I have to go kill the people who killed her. And then just like time would go by and then he's back and like didn't do anything about it, and then just the cycle kept repeating. Like, Diego, you've not really done much but throw a man fit and then sit in angsty silence. Anyone can do that. It's a part of my daily routine. My next beef with the show is Allison getting mad at Luther for losing his virginity to some random girl he met at a bar when he was drunk and high out of his mind, as if she wasn't married and had like an actual child beforehand and was not at all in a relationship with Luther. He's not allowed to have sex just because you like kind of like him but are doing nothing about it, but you're allowed to get married and have a child, so sex and lots of it. And I honestly didn't see the harm in Allison using her powers on her daughter for little things like just getting her to go to sleep when she was being fussy, and I wish we got to see her use her power more. Like, I guess why she's trying to go cold turkey. She's trying to stop using it so that she won't use it on her daughter and can get custody back, but come on, girl. When people are legitimately shooting up your house and trying to kill your family, I think it's okay to dabble in the dark arts just a little bit. Just a little, I heard a rumor you weren't trying to kill my family. Just a little rumor. Just a little one. This one's partially my fault. This isn't even necessarily a complaint about the show, more of a me being dumb. I thought the actor that played Luther was actually that big in the beginning. I just accepted that that was a real person who was that huge and had that small of a head in comparison to the rest of his body. The show leaves so many holes you have to fill in yourself. I just assumed that I was supposed to fill that in with, that's a real person. Also, some of his line delivery felt really awkward. But that could have just been the writing. What was in Vanya's book that made everyone so mad? It's not like they were a secret. They were on the news when they were kids. Everyone knew who the Umbrella Academy was. Just because they wore those masks, like, people still knew. She didn't out them by writing the book, so it wasn't like that was a secret. Maybe it was how their father treated them, but it doesn't seem to have affected their lives in any way, really. I don't get it. They never explain it. What was in the book? Also, when they're adults, it seems to be taking place in like modern times, 2019, I don't know, just a modern time. And no one has a cell phone? I don't think I remember seeing a cell phone at any point in time. People are always using payphones and phones with cords and stuff, and like, that's fine, but isn't this supposed to be filmed in modern times? I could be wrong. I'm usually wrong, but I'm just confused. So with Vanya, we never actually see her swallow the pills. Like, I know she did. I'm not saying she didn't. This is more, I guess, just a beef with the acting, but she would just put the pill in her mouth and then just, like, you never see her just swallow or anything. She's always dry swallowing the pills. How? Alright, so our hands are clean of that for a while. Let's get into the good stuff, alright? This is a wholesome video with positive commentary on something that I really liked. So obviously what makes the show incredible is the characters. I gotta give my number one to Klaus. You know I gotta do it. Klaus was just a work of art. Also, side note, most people know this, but I didn't know it going into it. Apparently, the show is based on comic books written by Gerard Way, you know, the guy from MCR. It's clear which character he identified the most with. So Klaus was often used to be the comedic relief to break tension in certain scenes, but I like that they never just left him at that. He wasn't just a flat character who was just there to break tension. He had his own struggles, his own story, his own character development, and he was an integral part of the story. Absolutely loved that. I absolutely adored every single second of screen time he was given. So number 5, we never, get a name from him. He was a wheelhouse of unexpected twists and turns. He brought an element of like the dry, cynical humor to the show, as well as, the knowledge of the apocalypse. I loved that he was just unpredictable. I never knew when or where he was gonna be. He was passionate and stubborn, and I loved that they kept him as a 13-year-old. The kid who played him did an absolutely phenomenal job. Diego was your brooding hothead who's got an obsession for vigilante justice and an ex-girlfriend, but he throws knives and that's cool. He was a cool guy. He was cool. He was a cool dude. Hazel and Cha-Cha, or as I more affectionately referred to them as Hamster and the Ice Queen. I could tell from the beginning the writers of the show were trying to make you like these two characters, and I just couldn't be won over. I'm glad they delved into their story because, you know, the dynamic of their partnership definitely got more interesting towards the end, and I'm glad they kind of gave us that part of the story, but at no point did I like them. Even Hamster, when he was dating Donut Lady, I just never got around to liking them. And Allison was just pretty good. Again, I wish we got to see more of her power. I think that would have been really a lot more fascinating. I loved, towards the end, her dynamic with her sister and that argument that they were having in the house when she was about to do the rumor thing, and then, it would have just been so cool to see her use that just a little more, just a smidgen. A rumor. And as I mentioned before, I felt she got repetitive a lot about like, oh, I have to go home to see my daughter, and then she just wouldn't, or she would have plans to and then just didn't. And I know that like stuff kept coming up, but she was able at one point towards the end to get a phone call, so it's like you could have maybe done that a few more times. I know she had trouble in the beginning, but like it worked at the end. So just obsessed with your daughter, but then you're like slow dancing in the park with your adoptive brother when you're like late for your flight. I don't know. I just found myself like bored in scenes with her, or scenes with her and Luther, or just Luther. Speaking of Luther, apparently a lot of people don't like him. I don't hate him because I can see why he acts the way he does. He's this huge man who, despite like his past leadership experience, just looks like he kind of wants to shrink down, even though he's like this. He just wants to shrink into nothing. He was brainwashed by his dad just like the rest of his siblings, so obviously that's going to take a toll on everyone differently, and the way it manifested in him was an obsession with his dad. And this was obviously to the point where he kind of acted like his father by locking Vanya up because he saw her as a threat that couldn't be controlled. He was afraid of her, just like his dad. I didn't like it either. I'm not justifying the action, because arguably that's what caused the apocalypse. That's when she let her cats out of the bag, so to speak. But I still get his reasoning, no matter how flawed. So Leonard, or Harold Jenkins, whatever, I saw him coming from a mile away. First, when he came to a violin lesson, without a violin, it's the first thing you do, like, oh, I want to learn to play violin. I should probably buy one before I go to my lesson. And I knew when he suggested that skipping her meds for one day wouldn't hurt, red flags up everywhere about that. I was never surprised when he did something shady. It was always followed by a response of like, of course you did that, you fat sewer rat. Vanya! I loved Vanya because I am a self-loathing weak leech who just latches on to the depressed character who feels like she isn't good enough or special. I make myself at home just cozy and soak in all the sadness that I can like it's a drug. My therapist is probably gonna be mad that I'm back on my bullcrap. She's gonna be therapist. I hate myself. And that moment in the parking lot when her powers just burst from her to save her limp tapeworm of a boyfriend was poetic cinema. It was a high that no drug could ever give me. It unlocked my 7th chakra and added 20 years to my life. Her whole character arc was the best part of the show. Now, in my movie expertise, a hallmark of a good story is one that keeps you on your toes. I've seen a lot of things in my time and find that I'm able to see most things coming. I'm able to predict where a joke is going. I can start a movie and kind of figure out how it's gonna end. And this is always based on past tropes that they just don't disguise cleverly enough. In some ways, it's impossible to avoid these things and have everything be 100% unique to your story, because let's face it, there's nothing new under the sun. Someone out there has made something similar to what you're making. Your goal is to still make it as unique and different as possible. So here are a few things I did see coming. Vanya having cool unlocked powers. I knew she was going to be like the master by the end. I knew that she was going to have the best powers out of all of them. They just made it way too obvious. They made that pill popping stuff way too conspicuous for me to not know something was going on. Allison and Luther having a romantic relationship was, of course. In their defense, though, before I watched this show, the only thing anyone could tell me was that there was sibling incest in the show, and that's just not true, first of all, because it's not like they were adopted and really raised as brother and sister. Honestly, they grew up in a glorified boarding school. It's really not incest. They're not related in any way, and they really never saw each other as brother and sister. But since someone mentioned that to me before I watched it, I was more keen to pick up on the smaller nuances that led up to the revelation that they had had a romantic past. Maybe I wouldn't have noticed those things if I hadn't had that knowledge going into it. I'll give you a pass on that. And I knew Leonard the slime eel was up to no good from day one, though I didn't quite realize the magnitude of what no good would end up meaning. But like when they said that the lady who had first chair disappeared, I knew right away that he killed her. I knew it. There was no other explanation. And perhaps it's because I watched that other Netflix show, You, not too terribly long ago, and that happens a lot in that show. But I just knew right away when they were like, yeah, she just didn't show up anymore. Oh, he killed her. Of course he did. Hazel falling for the donut lady. I mean, they didn't really try to make that a secret. They make it blatantly obvious the minute he walks into the donut shop. The flirting was just a bit much. I'm sure everyone saw that coming. And lastly, Klaus being in the trunk of the car. The minute that they said that they had someone in the trunk, I knew. Who else? My chaotic towel-clad son. So things I did not see coming. Basically everything else, of course. The show was very unpredictable, which is why I really liked it. It kept me on my toes, and it always threw surprises my way that I could not have ever seen coming, unless I guess if I read the comics, but I didn't, I'm sorry. What I did not see coming. The apocalypse, of course. Diego sort of killing their mom after desperately pleading to keep her alive, but knowing she had glitches, and then he finds her, and she's obviously having glitches, which isn't like that, I mean, like, okay. It's not that big of a deal. Probably see if you can get her fixed, but instead he just kills her. That made no sense, but it was a shocker, so that's cool. Patch's death, which I should have seen coming. I should have seen the girlfriend dying. I mean, she was the perfect candidate for dramatic death of good-hearted character that propels main character to seek vengeance. And then, of course, Five's whole crazy tirade at the headquarters. I definitely thought he was going to be more stealthy than he was, but he's just like, nope, grenade. And then the eye belonging to the sea urchin boyfriend. The minute that we found out he lost an eye, of course I knew that that was gonna be it. But like up to that point, of course I'm not gonna know that the eye belongs to him. He had 2 working eyes. Or so I thought. I maybe should have seen it coming, but I didn't. Of course, Vanya slashing Allison's throat. I did not even think. Like, I knew there was gonna be some sort of altercation. I figured she might hit her with a piece of furniture, or Allison would get upset and leave. I didn't expect her to basically attempt murder. Or at the time, I genuinely assumed that it was murder, that she was dead, and I just completely accepted that that had happened. I was just like, alright, that's where the story's going. We've now lost Allison. Okay, I mean, she never really used her power to begin with, so I don't know how much use she would have been. And then, of course, Ben punching Klaus straight from the afterlife. And then the entire last episode. I had no clue what was gonna happen. The entire thing. One more thing I did expect was Vanya being locked in that thing. I was like, oh, of course she's gonna like unlock some kind of power and be able to burst out. I just didn't realize it was gonna make her evil. So basically that's my review. I don't even know if I did that correctly, but I loved the show. It was crazy and fun, and it made me laugh, it made me cry, it made me gasp in horror. But what else can you ask of a show? That's the pinnacle of art. So yeah, if you're still watching and you haven't seen the show yet, I just spoiled a lot for you, but definitely still go watch it. It's still definitely worth the watch, even with the knowledge you have. There's still so many things I didn't cover that are still gonna just blow you away. An incredible masterpiece, and I can't wait to see what they're gonna do in season 2. Are they gonna keep them as children? Did they go in the past, try to fix stuff in the past? The people who played the adults are just get to take a break for a season, or maybe they're used for flashbacks, I don't know. I haven't like genuinely wanted to binge a show in so long. I don't like that word, by the way.
I binge Netflix. I binge watch this.
I couldn't stop watching it. There's a lot of times I'm like, okay, I'll take a break now, but every time an episode would end, it would end in such a way, obviously, that it was like, well, now I have to know what happens after that, and then you start the next episode, and it might take them a minute to finally tell you what happened. And then you're like, well, I'm already, involved, so might as well finish this episode out, even though it's an hour long. So essentially, if you have 10 hours of your life to spare, give it a go, because each episode is an hour long and there's 10 episodes. This is a number 5. Just do this times 2. Thank you for watching. Remember that I have a Patreon. The link is in the description. You get regular live streams and behind the scenes content from videos, and you get to see my videos earlier than everybody else. Sometimes it's a day early because I'm late, or sometimes it can be up to like a week early. So get on that. We have a Discord. You can argue with people all in a little bratty home. All in the bratty academy. I heard a rumor that you hit like and subscribe. If you made it this far, leave a comment saying Klaus's leather pants were the 8th member of the Umbrella Academy. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
my foot in my mouth.